Good evening. I'm Mark Evanier, and that guy over there is Mr. Bill Kirchenbauer, one of the funniest men I know, and I'm delighted that he's joining us here tonight. Let me tell you a little bit about Bill. I first saw him in a comedy club out in the valley. I think it was on Ventura Boulevard. What year might you have been playing places like that, Bill?
Probably about 1973, 4, something like that.
You had not done. I had not seen you on television. I did not know who you were at that point, and
Neither did I.
Well, right. At that point, comedy clubs had a lot of lousy people in them. I'm sure you followed a lot of terrible acts. I took a date to this place out there. The acts were terrible. We were actually going to leave, and then somebody said, "Hey, don't leave." Somebody at the next table said, "Don't leave. There's a guy coming up next. He's really funny. He's a bald guy, or he's got this stuff. He does things anyway." And we went, "Okay, we'll give it one more try," because whoever was on before you was just dreadful. And you came out, and I just laughed like a goon over this. We loved it. It was like the whole room was transformed. It was like, oh, they brought in a professional. They brought in a guy. There's actually a comedian on stage at the comedy club. And it turned out that we had a couple of mutual friends, Mark Wheelage, a few other people we knew, and they put us together, and we became friends. And I remember thinking, when is this guy going to get his break? Now, what year did you come out to Los Angeles? What year did you?
I don't remember. I followed my girlfriend out here, who in the 2 weeks between when she left and I left, because I didn't get this radio job that I was going to get, and I went out there and she'd already found another boyfriend. So I think I kind of lost consciousness for a little bit there. Probably about 73. But I didn't get right into comedy. I studied mime for a year or two, trying to meet girls, actually, and I ended up learning mime, and then I did improv with Howard Storm.
Our friend Howard. Good.
And Howard Storm, great improv teacher. He's my guru. And I learned about improv, and I knew in the back of my head that I wanted to go to do comedy, but I'd heard about the Comedy Store. I'd seen it on TV back in Florida where I lived. The Tonight Show, Johnny was always mentioning it. So I knew that was kind of that mecca of comedy, but I didn't want to go there and be okay or not be good. I wanted to be good when I got there. So I went to these little places like you're talking about out on Ventura Boulevard. Remember the Ha Ha Cafe or the Blah Blah Cafe?
I remember the Blah Blah Cafe.
The Blah Blah Cafe, and these little, there was a restaurant there, which I think this is what you might call the Times Restaurant. And it was a jazz restaurant. And Skip Stevenson used to go there. And I've met a lot of comedians, but it was a jazz restaurant, and they had a Monday night open mic, and that's where I went and started. And I knew that I went there to watch it once or twice, and I said, these people are eating and talking, and so you've got to get their attention. So I lived in this apartment building that had an alley that ran behind it, and it had this garbage truck that would go up and down it a couple of times a week, and it would make all this noise, and the guys would yell and stuff. So I decided I was going to do an inanimate object impression of a garbage truck, and it worked because everybody stopped eating, and they went, what is he doing over there? What kind of noise? And it got their attention. So that was my opening bit for years, because people shut up and wanted to know what kind of noise, what's going on over there. And so that worked. But I worked a lot of places like the Showbiz out in the valley, which was owned by Murray Langston, the unknown comic. And Deborah Winger was a waitress there. And I met people, Jeff Altman and different people like that. And then I went up to the Comedy Store. So I had a little bit of an act. When I went there, and it worked. You start working, and you work some more, and then eventually Mitzi would put you on, at night, 1 o'clock in the morning. I mean, I literally did shows for 2 people sometimes.
I was occasionally one of those 2 people. I was there a couple of times. Now, in those days, tell people the other comedian, Jeff Altman. Jeff was there. He was indecently funny.
Oh, he's still hilarious to this day.
And Skip Stevens was there. Who else was?
Oh
was there at
God!
the
Well,
time?
when I went there, the big guys were Jimmy Walker. He had a sitcom, and Freddie Prince. He had a sitcom, and those were the guys that were driving the Corvettes and the Mercedes and living the big life. Steve Landesberg was there. From Barney Miller, and just they were starting to find out networks that comedians, not that they hadn't ever not used comedians, but this was a real bunch of comedians around Los Angeles at that time. So the networks were always looking for somebody to base a show on, and those were the guys that did were Tim Thomerson. A lot of people don't know Tim Thomerson because he had a career as a comedian and then he went into acting. So a lot of people don't remember his stand-up, but he was like the premier. Jay Leno had been there for a while. He was from New York. So these were the guys that were getting the good time slots and getting somewhere. And even Jay hadn't done the Tonight Show by then. George Miller, just a plethora of comedians. Probably I'd take an estimate and say about 200 comedians, but everybody knew everybody and everybody knew everybody's act. And so it's not like it was today, but in retrospect, I read books about the time. They call it the golden age of comedy. And when I look at it, just from my own perspective, the people that I saw in the Robin Williams, how their careers went, it's an amazing thing. It was the golden age of stand-up comedy.
Yeah. Not only did everybody know everybody's act, some people did everybody's act.
Well, that's where that part came in handy, because people go, "Hey, you doing what's it?" And now
I saw Freddie Prinze do part of your act once, and I said something to him.
No,
I did.
Really? He must have done the garbage truck.
No, he didn't do the garbage truck. He could have. No, he did no physical comedy at all. That was a very
really? I never heard that.
What I did was I learned if a comedian, you hear a comedian steal a joke, what you say to them is you say, "Hey, listen, I just want to tell you, whoever sold you that joke stole it from Bill Kirchenbauer."
Right.
And if the guy would always go, "Oh God, I'll look into that. Thank you. I don't want to do a stolen joke," and they saved face that way.
Right.
I remember when I was there, the one guy everybody shut up to listen to was Steve Landesberg. They loved Steve Landesberg, and it would be like, "Oh, hold on, Landesberg is on. Let's see if he has a new line. Let's see if he has a new joke." And they'd all watch his act and go, "Oh, there's a new joke." They're deciding about it.
Yeah, such great people like the Gary Shandling, and then Seinfeld came in. By that time, I had kind of done a Tonight Show or two, and then my career of going everywhere in the country and doing comedy shows, because comedy clubs were now invented, and there were comedy clubs in Toledo, and there were comedy clubs in Indianapolis and Detroit, and all these things were springing up, and people were figuring out this is a good business if I live in a major metropolitan area, and
people
have a comedy club.
People working for free. You weren't getting paid at the time.
No, right.
That's right. But there were people coming in, talent scouts. Jim McCauley, was it Jim McCauley was the first guy from the Tonight Show to see you, or was it Craig Tennis? Was it Craig Tennis or Jim McCauley?
Jim McCauley, but I'd done a Merv Griffin show. That was my first national talk show appearance. And I'll tell you a funny story. This is one of my favorite stories. I was working at the Westwood Comedy Store one night, and it was late. I mean, it was like 12:30, going on 1, and I had an audience of maybe 3 or 4 people. And in comes I see this kind of shadow of people moving across the back of the club and go sit in the corner. There was a booth back there, and then they start kind of talking and when you got 4 people and 6 of them, 6 people are in the back talking, you can kind of hear. So I said, "Hey, I'm doing a show here. I hope it's not interrupting your conversation." And I said, "Hey, if you're going to talk, go the fuck outside and do it out there. Okay?" So this little shadow of people get up and they kind of move, and I could tell there were some comedians, and then they move and then they go outside. And then I finished my act. I don't know. You only did about 10 or 12 minutes there. So I get off, and as soon as I get off, the MC, he comes to introduce the next guy and then comes off and goes, "Man," he said, "you might as well pack your shit and go back to wherever you came from. You just told Merv Griffin to get the fuck out of the comedy club." And I went, what? He goes, yeah, you told him to shut the fuck up and get out. And I really, it was me. He said, yeah, they had a talent guy with them, and some comedians were over there kissing his ass, and you told him to shut the fuck up or get out. So he got out. And I thought, I might as well just go home and kill myself. What did I just do? And I went home, and that weekend, this girlfriend and I had puka shells. I wore puka shells and had a beard at the time. And so I that weekend, I think she and I got drunk or something. And she said, let me shave your beard. She shaved my beard, and I lost the puka shells. And I don't know, it's just something that happened. So I changed, but about 2-3 weeks later, working at the same club at the same time, in comes the shadow again and moves across, and I could tell it from before. And he went and sat down there, and I did my act, and I got off, and some other guys went on, and it was Merv again. And then, but he just leaves after a few other guys he watched come back. And a few days later, I got a call from his, I forgot what the guy's name was. He did game shows too. He said, hey, Merv saw you at the club the other night, and he thought you were pretty funny. Well, you want to do the show? And this is when, there weren't agents involved. They would just call the Comedy Store and say, hey, can you give me this guy's number? So they would call you at home. And I said, well, sure. So I did, I don't know how many Merv Griffins I did. I probably did about 6 or 8 of them. And I kept thinking to myself, does he remember me? Does he remember me from when I told him to get the fuck out of the club? And so I did about 3 or 4. And Merv was a real nice guy. He was real accessible. He wasn't like Johnny, where he had lawyers and people kind of pushing you away. And he would just come backstage, and he'd say, hey, have a good show. And one about the 3rd time, I said to him backstage, I said, hey, Merv, thanks for having me on again. He said, sure. He said, hope you have a good show. And don't tell me to get the fuck off of my show, okay? You kicked me out of a club, now you got to kick me out of my show. And then he laughed, and I laughed, and
nobody made more money in the business than Merv Griffin.
Oh no, but he was him and Mike Douglas. Remember Mike Douglas?
Yeah, I remember Mike Douglas.
Very accessible, down to earth guy, and Johnny was nice too. But Johnny was such a big star. They used to cordon off the area back there. I remember one of the first times I did the show. You backstage, and Johnny's going to come down now, and the security would take a little yellow tape and run it across the area there and tell everybody move over in that area of the stage. We're moving it and cordon it off. And then Johnny would come in smoking a cigarette with Bushkin, and they'd hang. And I said to the security guy, I said, but I'm on the show. He goes, doesn't make a difference. Move over there. Lock the thing off. And then when they'd introduce him, they take the tape down. But I had a lot of things going on backstage. I remember because I worship Johnny Carson. When I was a kid, I would watch during the summer. I could stay up late and watch him, and he was a comedian, stand-up comedian every night, And we had this big a picture window that had a big curtain in front of it. And at night, after my parents had gone to bed and I was watching the Tonight Show, I'd go behind that curtain of our picture window and stand there until they'd go, now here's Johnny, and I would step out behind the curtain from the picture window as Johnny would, and I'd watch him. And as many artists, you study musicians, you study people that do it well, and I watched him for years and years. So I really worshiped the guy. I thought he was great. And so standing back behind that stage, waiting to go out the first time is just like surreal.
Okay, well, let's get up to let's lead up to that first. Though you're playing the store now. You're playing. Did you play the Improv at that time? Did you where were you?
I was mostly a store guy, but for some reason I was one of the few people that kind of played both of them. But mostly it was the comedy store. But I did go down to the Improv. The Improv was the Improv was like New York people.
Okay, who'd you get along better with, Mitzi or Bud?
Bud.
Okay. Did you like Mitzi? Because a lot of guys didn't.
You know what? There's guys that worshipped her, and I know she helped a lot of guys out and helped them get off of drugs and keep them in play. But you know what? I never needed that. I never needed anybody's help. I had a job. I sold videotape equipment. I didn't need to, beg for room or beg for money. I was doing well on myself. Now, she was nice to me, but you know what? The only thing she ever did for me was allow me to entertain her customers for free. Yeah, well, and I learned, but I was not on the side of the store. I thought when you have people coming in that you should, and charging people to watch people, you should pay something to the performers. And that's really what the strike was. There's a couple books out that were written about the strike. They're both pretty accurate. It was ugly, but you know, people need to live too. When we have a comedian gives up everything to move from, you know, Oklahoma or wherever to see their dream, and their dream is to get up on stage and entertain people, you should say, well, you know, let me give you a little money so you can help this dream, so you can pay for rent, so you can pay for food and stuff like that. And that's what the strike was about. We'll get
to the strike. Let's go chronologically here. What I want to ask you is, you saw all these guys work in the store, work in the improv and such.
Mm-hmm.
The ones who made it, did it surprise you? I mean, did you see a big qualitative difference between the guys who made it and the guys who didn't? Did you see that those guys were the best
different
ones?
You know, Leno was always a hard worker. He was always right. And Tom Dreesen always working at it and stuff. And you know, Seinfeld, they work at that kind of stuff. No, you know, some of the guys that did the most drugs and were biggest assholes did great.
No, but I mean, when you saw these guys on stage, because I saw a lot of the guys who I'd look at them and go, that guy ain't going anywhere.
And they do.
You know, and the guys who I saw Letterman when he was starting out there, and I said, that guy's going to have a career. And I saw Robin Williams early on. I saw that guy's going to have a career. And a few people surprised me, but a lot of them, there were guys you'd see, and you know that the 10 minutes they had or the 15 minutes they had was all they had, and they sounded very derivative. They weren't unique. They'd get up there and they're doing Robert Klein, or they're doing George Carlin.
Yeah. There's guys that emulate, and that's always. But you know, I've always told comedians, you have to find your own style. It's like Cher. When Cher sings, you don't go, who is that? You know, it's Cher, because she sings like Cher. She has her style. And I think comedy is a lot like that. You have to kind of find your flow. You have to find what makes you different and what makes you your style. Just like a musician, you know, people can listen to people that play the piano and tell who that is, or the drummers and stuff. The same thing with comedy. It's all about your style, whether you're a storyteller, whether you're a monologist, whether you're an impressionist, and finding your personality. You know, stand-up comedy is a true American art form. Everything before that was almost like buffoonery and pies in the face and stuff like that. And only in America did people start to get up and talk about themselves and the world about them and their views on the world, you know, like Robert Klein and Alan King and stuff like that. That was a new thing. And up until, and still, even you go to Europe, there's a lot of vaudeville type, you know, comedy, but American stand-up comedy, where it's personal, about you, and you wrote it, somebody else didn't write it, and it's you, and that's a whole individual indigenous art form to America.
Okay. Now, I remember seeing Jim McCauley coming into the Tonight Show. I didn't know he was at first, and everybody is kissing this guy's ass and kissing up to him and such, because there were guys who thought the only way I'm going to become a star is to get on Carson. That's the only route. You didn't necessarily think that way, but a lot of these guys, that was the whole dream, and they thought that was the instant stardom. And he would say to the guys, I didn't know what he said to you, but he would say, oh, you're doing good. Maybe 6 months. Let me take a look at you in 6 months. Maybe take you. And then he would try to say, don't do Merv. Don't do Dinah. Don't do Mike Douglas, because Johnny likes to say that he had somebody on first. He didn't discourage you from doing Merv Griffin or any of those other shows, did he?
No, I never. See, I had a whole weird thing about, I mean, McCauley had seen me, but I entered this contest. It was the first and last Los Angeles International Stand-Up Comedy Competition. And it was run by the Ice House people, along with the people up in San Francisco who run the competition, who's been going on forever up there. Mm-hmm. And they tried to do it down in LA. And I came down, I saw a news story about it and saw all the guys standing in line, you know, waiting to sign up. And I thought, well, shit, I'm funnier than them. So I went down there and signed up. And George Carlin was one of the judges, and a couple of other people for Burns, Jack Burns. Yeah. Burns and
Schreiber.
Avery Schreiber. That's what it is. Avery Schreiber. And judges. And I won this thing. And I was on the newspaper, like second page, big thing like that. And then I got a call from the Tonight Show, and they said, "Hey, Bill, you know, we saw you won this contest. You want to come on the show?" And I actually turned them down. I said, "Jim," I said, "I don't want to come on there, the Tonight Show, because I won a contest." I said, "I want to come on because I'm Bill Kirchenbauer and I'm funny." And so and there was a big silence, and he says, "Okay, well, let me look into that," or something like that. And then I hung up, and I thought, what did I do? But I didn't want to go on in there like some novelty act, you know? I don't know. And I thought, what did I do? You don't say no. 2 weeks later, he calls me up and he says, "Hey, Bill, it's Jim McCauley. You know, George Carlin's guest hosting this week, Friday night. He wanted you to come on the show, and we'd like to have you come on. And, you know, we won't say anything about the contest or whatever." I said, "Great, I'll be there." And it was July 4th, 1977, I think, is when I did my first Tonight Show.
Okay, and now how nervous were you?
Well, I was not nervous. You know, at that point, you've done this stuff so many times. I can only tell you a quote that Bill Cosby gave me to answer this question. When one of the shows that I did with him when he was guest hosting, okay. I was backstage and I was kind of pacing back and forth, and he was sitting in the chair, and I hadn't really talked to him yet, and I knew he was the host, and he was looking at some papers, and he says to me, he says, "You know, why don't you do that over there? This is the Bill Cosby be cool area. That area over there is the Woody Allen slit your wrist area." And I said, "Oh, well, Mr. Cosby, I'm sorry. I'm just a little nervous." And so he gets up and he comes over to me and he goes, "So you're the comedian, huh?" And I said, "Yeah." He says, "Do you think you're funny?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Did you write this material?" And I said, "Yeah." He says, "Do you think it's funny material?" And I said, "Well, yeah." He said, "Did everybody laugh the last time you did it?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Then what the fuck are you worried for?" Yeah. So to answer your question,
and then he gave you a drink to calm you down.
Yeah, he did actually. Oh. I forget but to answer your question, when you're back there, you have done it so many times, you know it works, and so there's a bit of confidence. But yeah, you're nervous. You're looking at the backside of that multicolored curtain that's there, yeah. And you go on, and so yeah. But you know, nervous and choking are two. I've seen other comedians go on there and choke. You know, you only get 5 minutes or 6 minutes, yeah. Maybe. And sometimes they stand off camera and go, you know, you got to edit. So you have to like edit on the fly. A lot of, you know, one thing, a lot of comedians, they go on there and they don't know what to do with their hands, because in the nightclubs, they get this microphone, you know, they got this thing to hold their hand. And on the Tonight Show, they would boom mic them. So you got these guys that not used to having something in their hand doing this, and they don't do that. So that throws them off sometimes, and you got to play to the audience that's there in the studio and to the camera. Now, it's a whole different thing. Some people figure it out, and some people don't. Okay.
Now, the night you did the Tonight Show with Carlin was the host.
Yes.
Did you pick the material you did, or did McCauley help you pick the material you did? Did he say, "I want this joke, or that joke, or that joke"? Or
yeah, a little bit. Mostly, you know, I always say, when you're doing it, you know, a lot of comedians, they would go up when McCauley's in the club, and they would go up and they would do like 10 or 12 minutes. And I think, you know, you're stupid. You're stupid. You're confusing them. You're giving them too much material, too much opportunity to complain or not like some bit you did. Just do. So I always would give them, when I would audition for something, I'd give them just like a minute or more. I'd do my 6 minutes, 7 minutes maybe, and give them what I call their opportunity to piss in the pond. In other words, to come and go, "Well, I think you should make it blue instead of green." And I go, "Oh, okay." So, but if you give them too much, then they get confused. So just give them what you want and a little bit more, so they can come in and say that they did something to it. So I would do it. And he'd give me little tunes. I didn't find him to particularly have a good sense of what was funny and what was.
Well,
I think he knew. I think he knew what Johnny liked.
Yes, I discussed that the other day. He knew what Johnny wanted. Now, you opened with the garbage truck, and you probably
Probably.
you ended with the Matterhorn, probably, right?
That's probably pretty. No, I think I did my puppet thing where he attacks me.
Oh, the
Herman
ventriloquist,
Gibner. Yeah, where he attacks me and I fall all over the floor and fight him back into the, which is a great physical piece. Yeah, but you know what's great about that is if Johnny wasn't there, it didn't count. So what happened was I did the bit, the appearance with George, and then about a month later, Macaulay said, "Hey, you want to come back and do the show again? Johnny's going to be there." And this will be my first. But you see, if you did the material and Johnny wasn't there, it didn't count. So I got to do the same material the second time. So you get 2 for 1. Boom.
All right. And Johnny loved you. He said that's one of the funniest new comedians we've had on here. Yeah. And you were one of the few guys they had on there who did physical stuff. You were one of the. They had very few guys who came out and did anything physical.
Steve Martin had done a few weird things, and Albert Brooks, I think, did some stuff. But he did. He was always very nice to me. I think he liked me because I was just kind of erratic and
okay,
physical. I don't know.
You were unique, and you went over real well with the audience. They loved you.
Yeah.
Okay, I remember. Now you do the Tonight Show. Johnny loves you. How was your life different the next day?
Well, you get, it's the difference. It doesn't happen anymore, but you did it and you get calls from people. And I remember Jay Leno called me the next day, and Jay and I, we knew each other. We weren't real good. He was way up above me at this time, but he called me up at my house, and he never, like I said, we didn't hang out particularly, but we knew each other. And he was so nice. He said, "Hey, Bill, I just have to call you up and tell you I saw your shot last night, and it was just one of the best shots I've ever seen." And I said, "Well, gosh, thanks, Jay. That's that was nice." So that's one thing. One time I did a appearance, and I did 14 Tonight Shows. And one of them, I forget which one, I get about, this is back when people used mail, not email. I did the show like on a Tuesday, like on a Thursday, I get a letter from ABC, and I open it up. It's from "Hey there, Mr. Kirchenbauer. I'm a senior consultant with innovative entertainment at ABC and developing of all sorts of projects. And I saw you on the Tonight Show. I thought you were very funny. I think we should get together and have lunch and discuss some sort of development deal and blah, blah." Just a short little thing. I thought, wow, this is great. So this is like 2 days later. So I called up ABC. I had boom, boom, boom. Yeah, let me speak to Larry, whatever's. Oh, he's not here anymore.
That was ABC. That was ABC. Yeah.
He got fired yesterday. I thought, damn, why couldn't he have been there another month? Just a month. I could have gotten the money and signed the contract.
Okay. But you got a lot more work. Your price went up.
Yeah, and again, that went back to the comedy clubs. The comedy clubs, they were the big thing. You'd go to every place had comedy clubs. And when I think about all the traveling I did back then, and just everywhere. So I spent 25 years flying from here to there, working this comedy club and that comedy club, and dealing with hecklers and drunks and airports. And of course, traveling was easier back then. Yeah. But I, for 25 years, and then in 87, I got, I was doing, Growing Pains. I'd done some of those.
Well, we're skipping over one of the things
people
here want to know about. They want to know about a show called Fernwood Tonight.
Oh yes, Tony Roletti.
Yeah, that's right. How did Tony Roletti come about?
Well, Tony Roletti is an interesting story, and I'm amazed people remember because it's like 40 years ago. But I had gotten a call from my agent who said, "Hey, they're doing this new show over where Norman Lear, who at the time was the king of television, they're doing this show. It's supposed to be about a little town, and they're small town characters, and it's a talk show. So they're looking for different characters. And at the time, I sold videotape equipment, and I had access to a TV camera and some 3/4 inch tape. So I decided I was just going to bring a camera home, and I sat there and I did different characters. I put different hats on. I did a dog catcher. I did a doctor. I did the mayor of the city, and I did this character called Tony Roletti, and he's based when I was in college. I worked as a busboy at a Italian restaurant in St. Petersburg called Tony's. And there was a guy there who played the played the organ and he sang and he was not all that great and he got tips. And I was a busboy. I had to sit and watch this guy, 6 hours a night, every night. And he was laughable. He had a bad toupee. So I based this character on Tony Roletti. And I call him Roletti because I thought at the time, I think this song Ajita was big about indigestion. And so I figured, he takes Rolaids, he makes you sick. So we'll call him Tony Roletti. So anyway, that was one of the characters that I put on this tape. And it's so great. And this was a new thing. Nobody auditioned on videotape back then. So I sent this 3/4 inch tape into them. And a couple days later, I get this call from Alan Thicke, who was the producer at the time. I didn't know who Alan Thicke was. He said, my name's Alan Thicke. I got this show here. And he wrote all those songs. Alan, people know Alan from Growing Pains and stuff, but he wrote a lot of songs for a lot of the Norman Lear shows. And he was like he was the Johnny Carson of Canada for a while. And he was so he called me, I love that character. He'd bring the wig down and he hired me. And they sent me a script and I, like a good actor, this is when I was my first acting job on television. I get the script the night before. I'm so stupid. I memorize everything. And then I went in and I had it memorized and we sit there and I'd seen Martin Mull and Fred Willard. I kind of knew who they were. And so we kind of did this thing and we rehearsed and this was all new. It was just so kind of improvised, but scripted. And so we get done with that. You're going to take lunch. We're going to come back. We're going to tape in the afternoon. So I'm starting to go to lunch. This girl comes over to me and goes, let me see your script. So she takes my script. And it's the first time I ever had anybody he starts tearing pages out of my script and Xing things off and putting pages in. And okay, here's your script, a whole new script. And so I thought, oh my God, I can't go to lunch. So I went back to my room and I tried to, as good as I can, memorize everything and put everything together and just, in my mind. So we come back from lunch. I dress out. I think this is going to go bad. This is going to go really badly because I haven't rehearsed this. They just pulled all these lines on me. So we go tape the show. And it was exactly the way I imagined, which was that, they'd say something and I'd say something and it was out of order and things were here. And of course, those two made me look good. And I, to improvise because I was lost and didn't know what to say. And you got to say something. And we did my little segment and we went to commercial and I see Alan Thicke come from behind one of the cameras and he's coming at me. He's walking and I could tell he's coming at me. He ain't coming at them because I'm sitting on the couch and they're sitting at the desk and I could tell he's coming right at me. And I remember thinking to myself, he's going to hit me because that was so bad. He's going to hit me. And he was looking at me right in the eyes and he comes walking right at me and he gets right up in my face. And he goes, that was great. Keep it up. It's fabulous. And he walked away. And I thought, what? And so we come back and we did it again. And it was all over the place. And then I tried to sing and I sang badly and it was off tune. And, and so to me, it was a terrible experience, but they loved me. And I came back and did several appearances as that character. We got married on this show. And, I was and I would sing and I'm not a great singer. I can sing. I've sang in theater and things like that. And one time I ran into Alice Cooper at a racquetball place in North Hollywood. And he said to me, hey, you're that Tony Roletti guy, aren't you? And I said, yeah. He said, oh man, you're great. And I said, what? He said, yeah. He says that you're a really great singer. And he said, you know what you do? And I said, no. He said, you go from one octave up to the next octave, but the note above what that other note was in the other octave. He said, you do this jump. He said, that's really hard to do. And I said, I don't know. I just got to do it. And I've had other musicians. Bob Seger used to come to see me in Detroit and stuff. But musicians dig it. It's based on a real character, and I'm amazed that people still remember it. But it was great.
Yeah, no,
I enjoy it. It's a fun character. And then, of course, Andy Kaufman had his character a couple years later.
Everybody was doing lounge singers after you.
Well, Bill Murray had his character.
Many of them named Tony.
Yes, yeah. Yes. And I would have to say I was the first one to do it. I don't know how much extra money I get paid at the end of my life for that, but that's the stories.
Yeah. I remember another great compliment you got. You were the only comedian that Gallagher would let be on one of his specials.
Yes. I did. One of Gallagher came to me and he said, I'm kind of out of material. He said, I need to
he was out of
fill in."
material. He was out of material halfway through the first special. But all right, this was like his 6th or 7th special.
So
Melon Crazy, I think it was.
Yes, Melon Crazy.
Yeah,
that was
right.
it. But so he'd done several of these, and he was just kind of, and so he thought he'd have a guest on, and I would go on, and I said, sure. He said, you do about 10, 15 minutes in the show. And so I traveled with him for a little while, and we did casinos and stuff, and he would have me, what he would do is had me come out in the middle of the show. He'd go out and do, 40 minutes or so, and then he'd go, I want to introduce this Kirchenbauer. He's a funny guy, and blah, blah, blah. And I'd come out and I'd do 20 minutes, and then he'd come out, and just like the special. But yeah, he's a tough guy to follow. He puts on a great show.
Oh yeah, he did. I saw him in the Ice House one night, and he was recording his album. I'm on his album because we started talking back and forth from the stage. He was doing no prop comedy because it was for a record album. Right. He was very funny without any props at all.
No. He can do it over an hour just talking about it. He's very intelligent.
Yeah,
very smart.
But he famously does not like other comedians, very many other comedians.
Well, he's a chemical engineer. A lot of people don't know this, but he graduated college. In fact, we're both from the same area, Tampa, St. Pete area. He's from Lakewood, and he went to college, became a chemical engineer, and then he hooked up with Jim Stafford, who had a club up in Clearwater, and he became his roadie. And then then Gallagher decided he was going to be his own man, and he went about writing comedy. He's really he's a very intense guy. I really can't stand to be with him any more than about 3 hours because he's just intense. He's ideas and stuff and writing stuff down, and he's a mad genius is what he is. Him and Charlie Fleischer.
Yeah. Who are some of the other people like you toured with or you opened for?
Elaine Boozler, whom I consider to be the best, one of the best. She would hate me for this. One of the best. I'll say just comedians. I'm not going to qualify her. One of the best comedians I know. I've watched. She always kills. Great, smart material. Gary Shandling, Jeff Altman, George Miller, Marsha Warfield. I mean, I when I look back on my life. And I know you can say the same thing because I know who you've known and who you've hung out with, and I consider myself so lucky to have known the opportunity to sit. I mean, I have had lunch with Jonathan Winters 3 times and got to talk to him, and met Steve Allen and all these people. So I've been very blessed to be not only meet some of the heroes of my life, but some of them, become friends of mine that are just very special, individual, unique humans that are on this earth. Gary Mulder, my dear friend Gary Mulder,
funny man.
They're doing a movie on him. They're figuring to show us a documentary. It's got Letterman in it, talking about him and everything. And but he just there's not another Gary Mulder, and so all the people that I've gotten to know are just very special people. I've laughed my ass off at some of them, and it's great to not only watch them, but then to be friends with them.
Okay,
and know who they are.
Let's go back and talk about Carson a little more because he was very important in your life. Do I remember that you gave Carson a videotape that he desperately wanted? Am I remembering something wrong here? You came across. I remember that you came across a tape of Carson's Cellar. The live show he did on
maybe I did. I did. I forgot. Yeah. I gave him a couple things. I did. I found a copy of him doing Carson's Cellar on local. Yeah, I gave it to him. He also was interested in Ed Wynn, and I was telling him I was working on an Ed Wynn one-man show, and I gave him a copy of that. And then one thing that happened is I've done the show about 5 times now. And when I was a kid, like I said, I worshiped him. And at one point we were in Davenport, Iowa, and my dad had gotten out of the army, and we were kind of broke, and I don't think they had much money for a birthday gift. So what they did, they wrote to New York to get an 8x10 picture autographed to me from Johnny Carson because they knew I'd love that. And this was when he was in New York, and he was wearing a Nehru jacket. Okay, this is how far back this was. And it was this publicity thing leaning into the thing and said Johnny. And so I got it back, and it says, to Billy from Johnny, best wishes. And so I had this, I still have it to this day. And I thought this would be funny. What I did was I took my picture and I doctored it up with white out and black ink and put a wig on and made a Nehru jacket on my shirt and turned it as close as I could into what looked like his 8x10. And so we were in the makeup room, and he had his own makeup room. And I went in there. He had his own makeup person, and I had a little room, and I walked in and I said, excuse me, Mr. Carson. I said, I wanted to tell you that, when I was a kid, I told him the story, and I showed him the picture he sent me. And I said, since I've been on your show so many times, I thought you might like my 8x10 picture. And then I showed it to him, said, to Johnny from Billy, best wish. And of course it looked like, again, as much as I could with the Nehru jacket and his hair. And he laughed, and then he, left him in the room there. But he was a stranger. He was approachable, but he was. People have no idea how powerful he was. I mean, movie stars used to go to. I've heard stories of movie stars going to parties and going, "When's Johnny going to be here?" Big movie stars going, when's Johnny going to? Is Johnny? And he would, make an appearance and hi, because he held the key to every night. He held the key and the heart and the opinion of all of America. Because everybody would say, did you see what Johnny thought? Or did you see what Johnny said? And he was really the key to America.
Yeah,
very powerful.
When I was writing variety shows, if a question came up about, is this too inside? Is this will America understand this joke? Mm-hmm. Johnny was the question was, would Johnny do this joke? Would Johnny do a joke like this? And that was the arbitration of it. And when I was around NBC, everybody was terrified of him there. The first time I met him, he had read a letter of mine on the Tonight Show.
Oh, really?
And I'm walking around that area right where he parked. And
right next to the door.
He pulls his car in with it was a little two-seater Mercedes. License plate was 360 guy all around.
Oh, yeah. Right.
And there was a uniformed Burbank policeman who was supposed to meet him and walk him into the studio. So there were times when he had an armed guard with him all the time he was on the premises, because apparently he got a lot of crazy mail and threats and things. So the guard was 2 steps behind, and Carson pulled in right as I was walking past his space. So I turned to him and introduced myself and said hello. And I think the guard went for his gun. I mean, and Johnny kind of waved away and said I was harmless. And we stood there talking for 15, 20 minutes.
Wow.
Couldn't have been more charming. And he was just very polite and nice. And he thanked me for my letter. And he then sent me a letter afterwards, thanking me for things and saying nice things. I still got this letter from him. And then a couple of times over the years, I had occasion to call his office, and he would call me back. And I always thought for a second, maybe this is Altman. This is Jeff Altman doing him. And anyway, but he was very nice to me. And how many times did you do the show before you sat down next to him?
I only did it once, and that's when my sitcom was on. And I can't watch it because Jim McCauley screwed it up. He said to me, now you're going to go over and sit down with Johnny, and then you should tell him, because my show was just the 10 of us, so I had all these kids. He said, Johnny will say something like, wow, that's a lot of kids, and you should say to him, yeah. And to this day I can't remember. See, this is what happened on the show. Planned Parenthood. I couldn't. He said, you should say, oh yeah, and the Planned Parenthood people aren't very happy about it, which isn't funny. And that's exactly what I just did now happened to me right there on the set. I went, well, and the I couldn't remember Planned Parenthood, and it was well, and to this day I can't watch it. And I stumbled to, and then he said, oh, well, that's great, and went right to commercial. And I thought, that damn guy, if he just would have left me alone, I could have come up with something funny. But he tried to implant some stupid thing that wasn't a joke, wasn't funny, and so I tried, and I went along with it, and I did it, and it just fell flop because I couldn't remember Planned Parenthood.
I didn't think Mr. McCauley was very connected with comedy, as you know.
No, not at all.
I got introduced to him by Victoria Jackson. This was back when Victoria was willing to talk to somebody in my political grouping. And we went out to the Improv, and he sat with us, and there was a new comedian on, and Macaulay was just sitting there saying, "That guy stinks. He'll never make it," like that. And it was Norm Macdonald.
Oh,
And then Norm and I drove Norm to the Laugh Factory. He didn't drive, or he didn't have a car, so Victoria and I drove him to the Laugh Factory afterwards, and he was saying, "Yeah, I think Macaulay loves me. He's going to get me to do the Tonight Show." So anyway, but it's that what you had was he was like the gatekeeper to that.
Yes.
And I remember seeing Seinfeld say that when he was backstage waiting to go on for his first shot with Johnny, he thought, "This is it. Either I have a career or I don't. It'll be settled in 10 minutes."
Mm-hmm.
And he went on, and he had a career. He had a great career after that, and things like that. And I just kept seeing you turning up all these different places, doing different stuff after Carson. And one of the great success stories of people I know. I was very impressed. I was impressed. Remember, we were in Vegas one time, and remember the time we got stuck in the gas station in Laughlin? You and I, we were driving from Laughlin to Vegas, and you locked your keys in your car. Remember this at all? Yes.
No, I don't remember that.
We come out of the gas. We stopped at this little gas station. You were driving, and we were going to drive from Laughlin to Vegas. And we come out of the gas station, and you go, "Uh-oh, I locked my keys in my car." And we had to. Yes. And then we went on to Vegas eventually, but we stayed for 90 minutes in this gas station with a little mini mart, sitting there, and there was no place to sit. It was dreadful. And until there was one locksmith, there was one auto club guy in all of Laughlin, Nevada, and he was doing something else. So we had to wait till he came over, and he got us in, and we drove all the way there.
Yeah, because I lived in Laughlin with my Legends of Comedy show.
That's right. Yeah,
for a long time. Yeah.
And then you were doing Legends of Comedy one time when I was there at the Frontier. You were at the Frontier.
Yes.
And you had your George Burns guy.
Oh,
you had your Rodney Dangerfield guy.
Jay Leno.
You had your Marcellus
Forestieri.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
He did Jay Leno.
Yeah.
He's a master.
And I met in Laughlin. You had the show there, and that's where I met Eddie Carroll, who was doing Jack Benny in the show.
Oh, what a master! A wonderful guy.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't know I did this show, produced this show called The Legends of Comedy for years, and it was, if you can do Cher and Michael Jackson in a show, I figured, why can't you do comedians? So I did, and I had a I don't want to call it a stable, but I had a group of people who did these impressions, and they were more than impressions, because Eddie Carroll, he was Jack Benny. I had Tom Mulliga, who's also passed, a dear friend of mine, did an amazing Red Skelton.
Yeah.
And a guy named Bill Saker, who did Dangerfield. And these people, they were devoted to this. Was, like a caricature you get of yourself at Disneyland. That's like a caricature. That's what an impression is. These people did portraits. They weren't just little 10-minute, 3-minute impressions. They did these, and they were just great. And Eddie Carroll, and it was just and when you had walked through the casino, the guy that did George Burns, he looked just like George Burns. And people would come up to him and go, "Oh, Mr. Burns, we love you so much. We've watched you for years." He'd go, "That's very nice. That's very nice. I'm glad you enjoyed that." And then he'd walk, and one time I said this lady, I said, he's dead. You know that, right? And she goes, "Yes, but he looks so good."
Yeah. We were sitting in the buffet at the Frontier, and that happened. I think somebody came up to him and asked him how Gracie was.
Yeah.
That was great. Yeah, that was great. And I saw you at the Riviera a couple of times. I saw you playing all the different clubs there.
I used to play the Riviera. That was a great comedy club for a while. Okay. With Steve Sharippa, who ran the place and went on to the Sopranos. Yeah. And I'll
tell you something. Maybe you don't remember this. Do you remember Artie Brooks?
The name
Artie Brooks was the comedian at the Palomino Strip Club.
Yes.
And we went.
Were you with me that night?
We went.
Oh, you were there.
That's right. We went to see the guy, and he had been
Artie
there
Brooks, right? He's a dinosaur.
He was the last comedian in a strip club anywhere in the United States, probably.
Right.
And he was introducing. They had this girl named Pandora Peaks who had 77-inch breasts, and he would come out, and the audience would just heckle him and boo him and call him names.
But he was funny.
He was funny.
I used to go there to see, because they would have these strippers, and they were naked strippers. These weren't like, you know, things and, you know, that kind of thing. This was and he would come out and have to go against these bunch of drunk guys. Some of them were asleep and stuff, and do his act. And I would go there to watch him because he was such a warrior, you know, and he was left over from the 30s and stuff. And he was just a dinosaur. I'd watch him, and he would filthy. He was filthy. Put your dick in your thing. And
yeah. What I remember was that he would come out and he would do 10 minutes, and there were no jokes. He would just insult the audience. The audience would boo him, and he would insult them. And the jokes fell into a pattern, which is the first. This is a joke about you're gay, you're impotent. We've all had sex with your mother. You're gay, you're impotent. We've all had sex with your mother. I remember when this guy with a really loud shirt jumps up and starts yelling, "Get off the stage, you old fart!" Because these guys couldn't wait, 6 more minutes for the tip.
See the girl.
Yeah, and he, without missing a beat, and I'm sure this was the 8,000th time he'd used this line, he turns to the guy and says, "Hey, that's a great shirt. There's 2 fags driving around in a Chevy with no seat covers now." That was the joke. So they just booed him, and you were the only ones who liked him.
Oh,
and then we went back to see him. After he went off, we went back to his dressing room. He's sitting there. It's a little cubicle about the size of a phone booth, and he's sitting there smoking a little tiny cigarette, and he says, "Hey, I fucking killed, didn't I?" Isn't that great?
Well, you know what happened? How I first started talking to him was I had gone in there, and I always sat up on the on the runway there. There's not a lot of people there, but you sit up there, and I sit up there. He comes out there, and he does one of my jokes. He goes, "What do you call a fly that without wings? A walk." And I laughed, and I said to him, he was sitting, 2 feet from me. I was just looking, and he laughed, and I was shaking my head like this or something like this. And he goes, "What's up with you?" I said, that's my joke." He goes, "What do you mean it's your fucking joke?" I go, "It's my joke. I did it on the Tonight Show a month ago." So then one of the girls walks down the proscenium there, goes over to him, and says, and he leans over, and she goes, whispers in his ear. And so he stands up, and he pulls back, and he looks at me, and goes, "So you're some big fucking deal, huh?" And I said, "No, but that was my joke, and I did it on the Tonight Show." He said, "Yeah, you look kind of familiar." But it didn't faze him. He just kept on. Yeah. But
I remember at that thing, there was this lady, her name was Platinum Peaks. She had 77 breasts, and half her rack was standing up. and she's working up down we were sitting in the runway, and she came to you were wearing glasses, and she takes the glasses off your face, and she puts them on her breast, and they fit, indicating that one of her breasts was the size of your head.
Yes. I remember that.
Yes.
And then I turned down like that. And, I don't.
Yeah. Anyway, so it was just no. That was he was the last of his kind, and we were the only ones there who appreciated him.
Oh, he was great. He was great. I saw him many times. He would go up there, and he always killed. It's just that it was just so old school. You don't see that anymore.
No.
It's the kind of guy that would appear at Jack Ruby's nightclub.
That's right. Probably did. He very might have. Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Anyway, who were when you were at the store? I remember like Leonard Barr would be there occasionally.
Oh yeah, I saw Leonard.
And anyway, how many old guys did you ever see at the store?
Not that many.
Rodney would come in occasionally.
Yeah, Rodney would come in. There was a guy that he never went. His name was Howard something. Howard's, I forget, he wore a suit.
Oh, I think I remember.
Yeah, his big joke was, I met this girl, and she invited me over to her apartment. She said I should take protection, so I took my shotgun.
Yeah. Did you ever have to follow on the stage? Did you ever have to follow Lenny Schultz?
No, I don't think so. But Lenny Schultz is another You know, he's obscure. People don't remember. He made some appearances. Go crazy, Lenny. Go fucking crazy.
Right. Yeah.
And there's so many obscure comedians. And in fact, I play this game with one of my friends, Bruce Baum, who's another dear baby man, called Name the Obscure Comedian. And we come up with comedians' names of guys who were in that area but never really went, you know, we never heard from him again. Like Ed Bluestone. Remember Ed Bluestone? I remember Ed Very Bluestone. Funny.
Ed
Very
Bluestone,
funny. Guys like that. So we would.
Ed Bluestone's joke, a big joke was, I'm a quadrisexual. I'll do anything with anyone for a quarter. That was one of his jokes.
I do an impression of him. I'm a quadrisexual. I'll do anything. That's really kind of a dull way of talking. But he do that. Just all these obscure. There was a guy named Robert Lord. Very obscure comedians.
The joke of Ed Bluestone's that everyone who's watching this will know. He was an editor for the National Lampoon, and he wrote the cover.
We'll shoot this dog.
With the dog. Yeah, that was Ed Bluestone. That was the greatest cover in the history of magazines. Yeah.
Very funny.
Who else? Let's name some other obscure.
Andy Kaufman. He wasn't obscure. No. Let's see. Glenn Super, Mr. Bullhorn.
The Bullhorn,
the Woodman and the Carpenter, the Junkman and the Carpenter. Remember there was a comedy team. One played the. They were musical. They were musical comedy.
All right.
She's also. I mean, there were dozens and dozens of them. I just there's too many to and I left there because I got work. So there's a whole genre of people like Larry Miller and kind of Seinfeld and some of the people that came in after me. Because after the strike, I never went back to the Comedy Store except one time. I snuck in there one time to see Skip Stevenson do his ranting and raving, his new ranting and raving act. But just so many different people. I just Robert Aguayo, just dozens.
Okay, now. I want to get to we got some questions we want to get to here, but before we there's a couple of things we got to talk about. You want to talk about the sitcom thing you did, the dog thing?
Sure.
Okay. Sure. They had you were doing a show with me. We were doing a pilot for NBC, and we rehearsed with you for 2 days, and then you got put in this sitcom that Norman Lear's company was producing across the street.
Right.
We were at KTL, taping at KTLA, and they were taping it at KTDV.
Anson Williams and Laurie McCaffey special.
That's right. Yeah.
Sid and Marty Krofft.
Right. Sid and Marty Krofft. And they kept 2 days into our rehearsals, 3 days before we're going to tape. They said we need them over there. So we were doing both shows for a day or so, and then they said no, we need them full time. And so a day before we taped, they yanked him off. NBC yanked you off our show and put you on that show full time. And we replaced you. You remember
Jeff Altman.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And so you did that show. And the premise was that everybody was wearing a dog suit, talking about being somebody's dog. And it was one of those shows that everybody was going around saying, well, it might work. Yeah, not a bad idea. Maybe this will be big. And then once it failed, everybody's going, I knew that show would never appear.
I thought it was going to be a big hit. I did something evidently you're not supposed to do, which is go audition for a job when you've got a job.
Was you'd audition if we're going to tape or something like that.
Maybe it's a street. Yeah. Don't eat lunch. Go across the street and audition.
Okay.
So I went across the street and I read for Charlie Hawks, who was the big guy. And I did this thing, and I did this Jackie Gleason-esque type character. And he goes, stop. He says, wait right here. And he goes and gets a couple other guys, and they come in and look at me. He says, do that again. So I did the scene again. Wait a minute. So they go, bring in another round. And then they went, and I think they got Norman Lear. And they brought him in, and I did it again. And they said, okay, thank you very much. That's great. Because they never tell you right then. So I went home and I got a call and said, oh, they loved you. They want to hire you for this show. And I was playing a dog. Joe Piscopo was in the show. And so was Charlie Martin Smith, who played my assistant dogs. And I thought it was going to be a huge hit.
And Barney, who's the
Barney Martin?
Barney Martin, yeah, Barney Martin
replaced me. So I do this. I do this show, and you're in a dog costume. Sid and Marty Krofft. type costume with, you don't see your face, dressed up like, I thought it was going to be a huge hit. And we rehearsed for a week. And you didn't see the humans. You would only hear rah, 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 rah. And I did some improvise. I thought it was going good. And then at the time, what's his name? Fred Silverman was the head of the network. And he evidently watched the run through, which is the day before you actually tape. And I did my thing, and we were entertaining. The audience consisted of people that couldn't get into Jimmy Walker's show. And so they're there, and then all they're doing is looking at this set, which looks like a house in a backyard. And then I walk out dressed like a dog. And they spent the first couple of minutes just looking at it. Like, what is this? And we did the thing. I thought it was good. And afterwards, I'm getting done afterward. I thought it went pretty good. And I was so hot in this costume. They used to give me a battery operated fan that would keep me cool because I sweat like a pig. And so I did it, and I get a call as I'm about to leave. They said, "Hey, the producers want to talk to you." So I went into their offices, and he goes, "Bill, we really liked, we've decided to go in a different direction." And I went, "What does that mean?" He says, "Well, we're going to get somebody else." I said, "So I'm fired?" He goes, "Well, yeah." And I remember what I said to him. I said, "Can I keep the fan?" That's all I could say. And I went home and I cried. I thought, oh my God, I had to think, what did I do wrong? What would I do wrong? And it was literally devastating. I had a show that I thought was going to be, anyway, the next day they hired Gabe Dell from the Bowery Boys. And I don't know, he was there like 2 days and they got rid of him. Then they hired Barney Martin, who did Jackie Gleason. Now look, Norton, and it just never went. It did air though. I have a copy of it somewhere. It did air.
No, yeah, they kept changing the name of it for a while.
Yeah.
They blew it off, and it was. You were lucky you got out of that thing.
Well, you know what? They actually wrote an article about it. It was so bad in Penthouse magazine. I wish I could find that art. It was a whole story about because it was such a discombobulated thing. I mean, usually they'll fire somebody, get somebody else, but you don't have 3 people do a pilot. If they just would have said to me, "Hey, could you tone it down?" And I think that's what it was. I was too big, but you're a stand-up comedian and you act bigger than maybe, I don't know what happened. I've been fired from shows because I was too funny.
Well, remember you got fired a lot of times as a warm-up guy because you were too funny.
I was.
And I want to tell the story about the Mandrell show, the Barbara Mandrell show.
Right.
Because I was doing That's Incredible, and you came over to visit me to have lunch on the lot, and you said something like, "Gee, I need to get a job. I need make some bucks this week." And it was the Friday. We were taping on Friday, and Mandrell show was taping on Friday, right across the hall from us, which was a Sid and Marty Krofft show. And that was the night that they were airing the Who Shot JR finale, the episode that revealed who shot JR on Dallas. So we walked down to Marty Krofft's office, and he say hello. And I said to Marty, "Hey, who's doing your warm up tonight?" And he said, "Oh, Johnny Mountain, who was a friend
the weather guy.
Yeah, he was the weather guy on Channel 7."
Right.
And I said, "You're going to have trouble keeping the audience because Dallas is on at 10 o'clock, and this is the big episode. This might be the highest rated episode in the history of television." And Marty goes, "Oh my God, that's right. I need to do something." I said, "Well, put Bill on to his warm-up guy." He says, "You got it. He hired you right there." And you went out, and I went down to watch the warm-up. I played hooky from my show and went to see the warm-up, and you were hysterical. You were way funnier than the show. So at one point, Marty comes out to just thank the audience for staying much longer than they would have if you had not been there. And he's saying, isn't Bill Kirchenbauer terrific?" And they always says, "Yeah." And you yell out, "Tell him to put me on the show." And you led the audience chanting, "Put Bill on the show. Put Bill on the show." And Marty goes, "Okay, Bill, you'll be on the show next week." And he puts you on the show.
And I was, yeah.
And I don't know how many warm-up guys ever did that in their life.
Well, you had so much time to fill because they have to, that particular show, they do a sketch and then go change clothes and makeup. Then they do a sketch and go change clothes and makeup. So you might have to fill 15 or 20 minutes. And I just used to, I found over the years that people enjoy watching me, performers, have fun. They like to watch you have fun. So I used to do things. I'd get on the crane and try to drive it around. I remember I pissed off the prop guy once because there would be a sketch they were going to do, and he would go just before they go to it. He'd go through it and make sure everything was right, and I would follow behind him without him knowing it. And he'd move something, and then I'd move it back, and he didn't know I was back there, and the audience was laughing their asses off, and he wasn't paying attention because he was doing his job. So and then one time they said, hey, he's pissed off. Don't touch his stuff anymore. Because, if people know prop people, they check their stuff, because if it ain't where it's supposed to be when the actor reaches for it, they're in, big trouble. But he said, don't leave my stuff alone. But, it was funny. It was funny, and people get warm up is fun. But I have been fired a couple of times because I was too funny, and the show was like, screw the show, bring Bill back.
I saw you down at the Comedy and Magic Club one time, and they had in the audience, in the middle of the audience, there was a tripod, and there was a video camera on the stage that was putting the show on monitors, big screens on the side for the people who had the crummy seats. So you walk out to the audience, and you go out and you stand behind the camera, and you just looked at it, and you finally just looked up the monitors, which had nobody on them, and you start going, pretty fucking dumb show. Pretty funny. and you start heckling your own show, and you stood out there for like 6 minutes talking about how terrible the show was. It was one of the funniest things I ever saw.
I used to do. That's where I started. They had that low drop ceiling at the Comedy Magic Club, because you could stand on a chair and touch the ceiling, and just screwing around. And I got to bed. I do this every time when I was down there. I would go up there and I'd remove one of those big tiles from the ceiling, and I'd get up and I'd take it down, and I'd go, hey, who ordered the Sicilian pizza? And I'd start improvising with it, getting laughs. And I'd go, and then I act like it was, I found a cave, or I found a tunnel. We can get out this way. We can work our way out through it. We'll get away from the Nazis. Blah, 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 blah. And that's how I got the part in Airplane. Was because they were looking for some deranged mental guy. And so when I went and auditioned for that, I didn't even say hi or anything. It was the Zucker brothers were in their little room in Paramount. And I came in. I didn't even say hi, how you doing, blah, blah, blah. I just walked in the room. I jumped up on the couch, and there was an arm rest on the couch, and I could touch the ceiling. And I put the ceiling tile down off the thing. And I said, I found a tunnel. We can go out this way. They'll never find out. $50 for a cigarette's too much. We got it. And I just did that for about 3 minutes. I put the ceiling tile back. I go, screw it. And I ran out. I walked, didn't say anything, walked home, went home. And my agent called him and said, hey, you got the job. And that was Airplane. And I didn't know what that was. I went on that set to do that. And I had I said, what movie is this? Because the set I was on had Ethel Merman. And then they had this guy who had his leg wrapped up around his head, holding a dead baby, and with a blown up Jeep. And it was just, and I was watching them shoot something. I said, what is this movie? I had no idea what they were doing. And then when I saw it, I thought, wow, I'm uncredited in that movie though. But
oh, really? Oh, well, people know who you are.
It was 3 seconds, but I still get residuals.
It was a memorable 3 seconds.
I take that 32 cents and spend it every time.
Okay, now we're an hour and almost an hour and 8 minutes into this, and we haven't really talked about.
Fine, I got nowhere to go.
Yeah, we haven't talked about Just the 10 of Us and Growing Pains before that.
Okay,
you got on Growing Pains. Did that have anything to do with Alan Thicke?
Did it have anything to probably there was an audition. I lived in North Hollywood, they were Warner Brothers, the offices for Growing Pains, and they'd been on for a couple 2-3 years or so, and it had done very well in the ratings. And I got this call from my agent. He goes, I go over there audition for some part, and I went over and auditioned. I really almost didn't go because I thought it's just a little tiny part, and that's whatever. But I went over anyway, and I auditioned. I don't know what the part was, but I didn't get it. And about 2 weeks later, seems like 2 weeks seems to be the magic number here. I get a call from my agent and said, the guys from Growing Pains called, and they got this character of this coach, and you don't have to audition. They'll just give it to you. And I said, oh, great. Okay. So I went in, I did one of the shows, and it was great. And and then a couple weeks later, they called and wanted to come back. And I think I did about 6 or 7 Growing Pains, and they kept developing the show, and it got bigger and bigger, and the parts got a little bigger. And I'd enjoy doing it. It was literally the closest studio to my house in North Hollywood. And And I'd known Alan now for several years since, Fernwood Tonight. And so it was great. It was great. It was a part. It was a once a week kind of guest star part. And then one day I'm in my house and the phone rings and my wife answers the phone and she says to me, the producers from Growing Pains are on the phone, all three of them. Again, and this is the stuff that goes through your head because it was like with Alan Thicke, I thought it was going to hit me. I remember thinking to myself, what did I do? And this is what I thought. I thought they're in the editing. They're at the editing. They're editing a scene, and I've got my hand like this. I'm holding it next to my finger or next to my leg or something. That's what went through my head. I'm holding my hand in a vulgar section, and I thought, why would they call me? Why would all three of them call me? I must be in some sort of major trouble. What could it possibly be? So I said, hello. They go, hey, Bill, how you doing? Fine. Well, listen, all three of us are sitting here with ABC people and just talking about how would you like your own sitcom? And I said, and then that's really what it came down to. We did a little test pilot that people can watch on YouTube, actually, my screen test. We did about a 10-minute screen test of the character. And, it ran for 47 episodes. I was very proud of it. A lot of hard work. One of the best times of my life. I enjoyed it because it was the closest thing to a real job. As you know, television is not like, shooting 1 hour series where it's like a film. You got to get up and travel to the pier, or you got to get up and travel here. It's like a movie. This sitcom, you can go in and work, 9 to 5 and tape late on blocking days and recording days. You can live a normal life for the most part. And it went for 3 years. Ratings were great. I just recently read an article somebody dug up and sent to me how ABC screwed up and got rid of us, and because Jeff Franklin and his associate wanted all 4 half-hour slots on TGIF, and they filled it up with some piece of crap, and it died. And then they put something else in there, and it died. And how they should have just kept us because we had great ratings. We were actually beating 2020 at the time because we were opposite it. But you know what? It should have ran another 2 or 3 years, and it ran on USA Network. But that's showbiz. It was political.
Well, I remember being with you and you getting recognized from that show, and that was and nobody could get your last name right, but they all knew who you were. Some of them called you Lubbock, Coach Lubbock.
Oh yes,
but they were, we were in the casino in one of the casinos in Vegas, walking through, and all these people are going, hey, there's that guy. There's that guy.
Yeah, that guy. I get that. Yeah. Hey, you're that guy. You're what usually happens, because I used to do these comedy clubs, and I'd find myself in places like, Albuquerque or Toledo or wherever. And I'd be in a mall, killing time during the day. And I go to the food court and I'm standing in line for some pizza or something. And some guy goes, hey, this is how it usually goes. Hey, you look like that guy on TV. And sometimes I go, no, it's not like me. I didn't want to be bothered or whatever. Go, yeah, you're that guy. You're that guy that does it. I recognize your voice. I go, no, I'm not. Yeah. And I go, okay, you got me. I am. No, you're not. Why would you be? And then I go, yes, I am. No, you're not. You're not him. Go, yeah, it is me. Why would you be here? Well, I'm doing okay. Yeah, you're not. You're lying. I go, okay, I'm lying. I think you are that guy. so sometimes.
Well,
being recognized. I rarely get recognized now. I gotta stop and look at people sometimes. People don't notice you, on the sidewalk and stuff. And then where I live, nobody particularly cares. And it was a long time ago. I don't, fame is fun. Somebody asked me what it was like to be famous, and God knows, by all means, I'm not famous as compared to how famous people can be. But I've always told them it's like being a 6'2", big-titted, blonde, beautiful girl. When you walk in the room, everybody kind of stares and looks at you, and they whisper about you, and they, people don't know that they can see you. You can see them whispering about you. And, so, I mean, it's fun, and it's not fun sometimes. It's a toy, and it's fun, but, sometimes it can be a real inconvenience.
Okay. We got a few questions out here.
Okay.
Stu Shostak wants to know, has Bill kept in contact with any of his TV daughters?
Yes. Yes, they all have gone on to be fine young women with married, not all of them, but they've got their own family. Yeah, I have actually. I'm friends on Facebook. I talked to Brooke Thies. I talked to Joanne Willette. I just talked to Deborah Harmon, who played my wife recently. Every once in a while, I talk to the producer. It really is a family when you know this, when you work with people on a show for years, you just become really close. And I learned a lot during that time. And it was like I said, it was probably the best time of my life, financially, and success and recognition and being able to perform my art and that kind of stuff. I'm really still basically a stand-up at heart. I love the acting, but I'm getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning to go sit in the trailer and have them put cold makeup on you in the middle of, Montana is not something I'm particularly crazy about, but I would like to do. But this is a good time for me to mention. I do other things now. I have my own podcast, of which I want to have you on as a guest.
Yes, that's right.
Called the Kirchenbauer Half an Hour. And if people go to Half an Hour, HAFFENHAUER, halfanhour.com, they can watch the Kirchenbauer Half an Hour. Actually, got a little 2 on the end, so it's Kirchenbauer Half an Hour to the Second Power. And I've been doing that for about the last 6 months, and I enjoy doing that. I'm moving to Bangkok, Thailand within the next few months, and I'm going to be doing videos from there for a little show called Fat and Bald in Bangkok. Let's see, I'm going to be on Apple TV on a show called Defending Jacob. It's some show on Apple TV. They're using a rerun of me from Mork and Mindy. So, but it's a credit.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
and of course, I produce the Ultimate Robin Williams Tribute Experience at robinexperience.com. I have a gentleman that I work with, Roger Cabler, who does a right button on unbelievable canny Robin Williams. And we travel with that show to performing arts centers and corporate events and casinos. And that's robinexperience.com. And Roger and I have a great time doing that show because I feel like I'm working with my good friend Robin Williams, and people come and see the show. People saw a lot of acting that Robin did, but they don't remember his stand-up, and this is the closest thing you're ever going to get to see it. Roger Cabler does a fantastic job, and we've been doing that for a couple of years and enjoy that. But it's always new things. You go on and you do other things, and I'm having a great time right now. I have a son. He's getting married. I might have, I just try to keep myself happy doing all sorts of stuff.
Okay, let's take a couple more questions here. Here's one you don't have to answer if you don't want to.
All right.
Kevin Mummery wants to know, who was the worst comedian you ever had to follow?
The worst comedian. Well, I mean, worst is kind of a hard thing to say. There's a guy, and I forget his name. He used to have, he's a foreign guy. What is he, Filipino? He used to have this barrel that he would get in and out. Angel Salazar. Salazar.
I think I remember
this guy. He and I were working at college once. And this guy, they'd hired me and him. He was on first. And he uses like dildos and shit in his act. And we were working at this college, and he was out there doing all this filthy material. And it was like dicks and stuck and all this stuff. And, and now here's Bill Kirchenbauer. I'd like to do a garbage truck. And so it's, it's, I think the worst thing to follow is a bad intro. A lot of people don't give enough credit to introductions and how important they are. And if you go on YouTube, you can see the worst introduction I ever got, which is pretty funny. I don't know. I always want comedians.
What is the worst introduction you ever got?
Oh, you got to watch it. It's so bad. This guy, it was a New Year's Eve in Albuquerque, and he got up and he was just shouldn't be on stage. He was trying to make jokes, and it was just absolutely horrible. Go and look on YouTube on Bill Kirchenbauer, and you can dig it up there. It's just one of the worst. It was long. You know what I did? I wrote down on page. People want to do things with intros. I had a guy once wanted to read everything he downloaded off of IMDb, and I said no. Just say, he's done this, he's been on the Tonight Show. Here he is. You don't want to go on and on. And I wrote down things for this guy, and he forgot it in the booth, and he went up there and stumbled around, and then now here he is. And people do things like a backwards. I do this with corporate stuff. The boss will come, the CEO will come. I want to introduce you. I go, okay, well, let me see how you're going to do that. Well, okay, I'll do it. Bill Kirchenbauer. I go, wait a minute. Stop right there. Stop right there. That's called a backwards introduction. You don't start with my name. The name is the last thing you say. Da 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 da. Bill Kirchenbauer. And so, so the worst thing to do is follow a bad intro. I always like a good intro.
All right. Now we got a few comments here.
Should be touching.
We have the great comedy writer Bob Isles is online here.
Ah,
he says Roletti was a fantastic character to write for.
Yes, he worked on the show.
That's
him and his partner, and Harry Shearer was one of the writers on the show.
Yeah. And when Ben Stein involved in that?
I think he was. He was. And of course, the great band leader, Milton
Frank Duvall.
Frank Duvall. I mean, I didn't know who this guy was. He was just this little guy over there at the bottom. And then, after I did the show a few times, people go, "Oh gosh, you're written from Frank Duvall." And Frank Duvall, I mean, he wrote all these great sitcom songs, music by Duvall, movies, and he was just a music writing guy. He was just huge.
Anyway, Randy Clark wrote, "I always thought that Just the 10 of Us had quirky, almost subversive jokes from time to time, and I have always given Bill Kirchenbauer credit for that."
No.
All right.
Sorry. That was just the producers. They would try to write dirty jokes. And I unfortunately, I wasn't allowed. See, when I worked with Robin Williams on Mork and Mindy, the first day, and I have a thing on YouTube also explains how a sitcom is made. A lot of people have no idea. I mean, I have people come up to me and think you shoot it in a day. Well, yeah, you shoot it in a day, but you rehearse for 4. And so it's just a difficult thing to do. Okay, I've digressed here. What were we talking about? I lost my train.
You lost me too. There.
About the process of I digress myself out of the, people think that they don't understand how long it takes to do a show.
Yeah.
And what was this question? Maybe that'll remember.
My boss. He thought you were responsible for all.
Oh, yes. Okay, I got it. Because when I worked with Robin Williams, we would screw around for the first day or two, and improvise. And then the writers would come in and go, "Oh, that's funny," and they'd add it to the script. Well, on my show, they didn't let me improvise. Very little improvisation. They would just write it tight. So I can't take credit for any of but they did have subversive kind. They would have arguments with people from the network, about censorship stuff. About, oh, you can't say salami. You got to say sausage, or things like that. And they would tell me I wasn't part to that. I did write one of the episodes. It's called the cow episode. My writing partner and I, Brad Slate, we wrote that. But yeah, they tried to. It was 9:30, so they would push the. Back then, it was considered kind of, they would do this double entendre naughty thing. And sometimes, it didn't fly, or the network didn't want it. And, but no, they did not let me improvise too much.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, Damondo wants to know, name one thing you really enjoyed mocking in your comedy. When you were last couple of times I saw you just you were doing a lot of this things you were pissed off about. You kept saying, I had to say something about that. I had to say something about that.
That was my saying thing. Yeah. I had to say something to him. I don't know everything. I have great pieces about airplanes. I don't sit down and write stuff where I say, I'm going to write this down. I'm going to sit here and write. I know Jerry Seinfeld, he'll sit down at a type computer and say, I'm going to write jokes. I don't do that. I think of shit. And if I'm lucky, I'll write it down on a little note and then try to develop it. But I have and pieces grow. I watch old videos of mine where I did this bit, and then I'll watch it again, that I did it again, but it grew. And I got this whole thing about cows and flying and stuff. But I have a very funny, one of my favorite jokes I do is about, you see people, stupidest thing, stupid people. That's what I like to mock, stupid people. And I always say, it's the stupidest thing. You ever get on the airplane and watch people take pictures of cities out the window of the airplane at night? with the little camera. They'll get the camera and stick it at the window. Go, oh! I said, how powerful do they think this flash is? What do they think? There's people in their backyard standing around going, well, oh, what was that? Oh, they're taking pictures. Come on, kids, fly, or pilots and stuff. That's one of my favorite jokes. I don't know. I just think of stuff. Sometimes I've been asked before, well, how do I describe my comedy? And I really, my style, I'm like a little buffet of things. I do sound effects. I do inanimate object impressions. I do voices. I tell stories. I rant. I do one-liners. I do a little bit of everything, and I never do. This is one thing, Mark, that I think has saved me, is that I've never been wrote. Never. The best compliment I could ever have people tell me when they see me, they'll say, I've seen you 2 or 3 times, and you're never the same. I mean, some of the bits you do.
That's what I noticed about you, Bill.
And I've never wanted to be one of these guys that hate their acts. And they do it so long, they dig this, what I call a comfort ditch. And they do it over and over. And after 10 years of digging that ditch and walking in that ditch, they've dug themselves, and they don't have the balls or freedom to give themselves the freedom to do other things, to expand, to improvise. And I never do. I don't really plan. Maybe the first couple minutes, but for the most, I try to keep myself entertained, because when I'm entertained, then the audience says, oh, he's having fun, and they have fun. So I never wanted to get one of these guys that was rote, where you just do the same joke, because you'll hate your act and you'll hate yourself after 5, 10 years, 20 years.
Okay. Okay. Now, the last question I'm going to ask you. Now, you're going to move to Thailand very shortly.
Yeah.
You would have moved by now, except there's travel restrictions and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Am I going to ever see you again after you move to Thailand?
I don't know, Mark. Maybe you should come to Thailand. I don't know. My son he came to me, and no, I'm not married to a Thai girl. People always say, well, you're married to a Thai. When I go to the Asian store and buy food, I check out, there's always some woman saying, you married to a Thai girl? I go, no, I just like the food. I'm married to a Texas girl. But my son decided, I took him over there, and he wanted to go to college there. And I said, and he had a little career himself of being in commercials and stuff. He did a lot. He did more commercials in 3 years than I did in 30, and he made some money. And
you guys you did a commercial together, and
yes, we did. Yeah, that's on YouTube. Yeah. And so he when I took him over there, he said, I like it over here. I want to buy a condo, which he did, and then he wanted to go to college. And I said, why would you want to go to college? He said, well, all the teachers are from either Oxford and Cambridge in Britain, or from Northwestern in Chicago, because they go on sabbaticals. And here's how much it costs. And I thought, wow. So he bought a condo, and then he went to college there. He's since graduated, and he deals in international financial stuff. Money, he invests money. He's got an investment fund where he invests in property in Cambodia. He's turned himself into quite just the opposite of what I am. He knows. He showed me textbooks he learned. So he said, you and Mom should retire over here. Now this is like 5 years ago, and I said, why? And then he said, hey, look what you can live in. Look how you can live, and and I love Bangkok. That song Bangkok. Now we're in the city. It's a great. It really epitomizes this
one night in Bangkok.
One night in Bangkok, and it's an exciting city. It's one of the top. It's tourists. It's the street food. The people is modern, and it's funky at the same time. And I just love it. I love the whole, it's the closest thing to going to another planet you can get without getting on a spaceship. And I just love it. I'm calmer over there. They have Watts, they have monks, and I just love Asian culture. And it's a place where a lot of people around the world go to be. You can meet if you go to live down in Mexico, you're just going to have, a Hispanic culture. In Bangkok, Thailand, people from all over the world, Japanese, Chinese, Russians, Brits, a lot of Brits. They got British pubs. They got Germans over there with German Hofbräus. It's a very, very eclectic place, and it's ultra stimulating. I mean, you get there and people just it's sensory overload when you get to Chinatown and some of the tourist areas and if you don't like, it's like New York. I always tell people, the first time I went there, this is a perfect example. I got there at night. I took my cab downtown. And again, this is like New York, okay? This is like downtown New York. cab driver took me to my hotel. I get my luggage out. I turn around, and there's a guy standing outside of my hotel on the sidewalk with an elephant. And he said, give me $1 and you can feed the elephant. And I said, where else can you find this kind of stuff? So I find it to be very, and if you don't like the New York urban kind of feel, then you get in the car or you get in a plane, and an hour later you can be in Hawaii at a third of the price.
Wow. Okay. Well, we just got the best comment of the entire interview. Fowler Jones wrote, "One night in Bangkok makes a bald man humble." Isn't that great? That's terrific. Yeah. Thank you, Fowler, and thank you, Bill. I enjoyed this. I hope we stay in touch. We always talk in the country. We got to go someplace. We got to go out and eat stuff together and things like that. And,
well, you come. You'll come to Bangkok. You'll like it.
There's not a chance. Not a chance in the world of that.
To answer your question, I'm sure you'll see me again sometime. I can always get on a plane and fly back. I don't know. Maybe somebody will get smart and reboot just the 10 of us, or decide, hey, that guy's pretty funny. Maybe you should do a sitcom again. So,
okay.
And whatever.
Well, thank you, Bill, and thank to everybody who listened in on this. Tomorrow, as you may know, folks, on Saturday, which is Saturday at 1:00 in this space, we'll be trying to do one of our cartoon voice panels from San Diego Con. There's no San Diego Con this year, but we're going to try to move it online. And I've got 5 terrific cartoon voice people who are. Bill was on Garfield. We had Bill on Garfield one time. Yeah. Anyway, and thank you very much, and we will see you someplace soon. Thank you. Bye. Good night.
Thank you, Mark. Take care, man. Bye.